प्रभु नित्यानंदा श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासदि गौरभक्तवृंदा श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंदा श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासदि गौरभक्तवृंदा श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंदा श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासदि गौरभक्तवृंदा Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, dear devotees, Dandot Pranams to all. We welcome all of you for the today's morning program Nithyam Bhagavata Sevaya. And today we are very fortunate to have His Grace Sri Balaji Prabhu, and Prabhu will enlighten us on Srimad Bhagavatam 4th Canto, 26th chapter, verse 11. Over to you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunj Bihari, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunj Bihari, Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari, Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari, Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana, Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana, Yamuna Tira Vanachari, Yamuna Tira Vanachari, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari, Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari, Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana, Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana, Yamuna Tira Vanachari, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Jaya Radha Madhava Radha, Madhava Radha, Jaya Radha Shama Sundar Radha, Shama Sundar Radha, Jaya Radha Krishna Chandra Radha, Krishna Chandra Radha, Jaya Radha Govinda Radha, Govinda Radha, Jaya Radhe Rasa Bihari, Radhe Rasa Bihari Radhe, Jaya Radha Madan Mohan Radha, Madan Mohan Radha, Jaya Radha Ramana Radha, Ramana Radha, Jaya Radha Gopinath Radha, Gopinath Radha, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Gurudev, 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev, Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur Hari Bol. Jai Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parivrajakacha, Ashtotra Shatays Divine Vivachanarand Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parivrajakacha, Ashtotra Shatays Divine Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Gaur Kishore Das Shri Babaji Maharaj Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur Jagannath Ji Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Anant Koti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Shehradas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem se bolo Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. मथुरा धाम की जय, मायापुर नवद्वीप धाम की जय, पुरुषोत्तम श्री क्षेत्र जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय, श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंडल गिरिगोवर्धन की जय, गंगा माई की जय, यमुना माई की जय, भक्ति देवी की जय, तुलसी महारानी की जय, कबीर पाद हरिनाम संकीर्तन की जय, श्रील प्रभुपाद ट्रांसलेटर बुक डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन की जय, ताई गौर प्रेमानंदे, हरि हरि बोल, ऑल ग्लोरीज टू assembled devotees, हरे कृष्ण, ऑल ग्लोरीज टू assembled devotees, हरे कृष्ण, all glories to assembled devotees, हरे कृष्ण, all glories, all glories, always all glories to Shri Shri Guru Vanshi Govardhan. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswati Vyasam Tadodayam Ashtapraya Shubhadreshu Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Nanda Gopakumara Govindaya Namo Namah. Hare Krishna. Today we are reading from Canto 4, Chapter 26, text number 11. The shloka is as follows. Tatha kshatrat parishranto nivritto graham evan kritat snano chitarahara samvivesha gataklamaha. Tata kshatrut parishranto nivritto graham evan kritat snano chitahara samvivesha gataklamaha. Tata kshatrut parishranto nivritto graham evan kritat snano chitahara samvivesha gataklamaha. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Charanarinda. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation. After this, the king, very much fatigued, hungry and thirsty, returned to his royal palace. After returning, he took a bath and had an appropriate dinner. Then he took rest and thus became freed from all restlessness. Purport. A materialistic person works throughout the whole week very, very hard. He is always asking, where is money? Where is money? Then, at the end of the week, he wants to retire from these activities and go to some secluded place to rest. King Puranjana returned to his home because he was very much fatigued from hunting animals in the forest. In this way, his conscience came to stop him from committing further sinful activities and make him return home. In Bhagavad Gita, materialistic persons are described as dushkritanaha, which indicates those who are always engaged in sinful activities. When a person comes to his senses and understands how he is engaging in sinful activities, he returns to his conscience, which is herein figuratively described as the palace. Generally, a materialistic person is infected by the material modes of passion and ignorance. The results of passion and ignorance are lust and greed. In the life of a materialist, activity means working in lust and greed. However, when he comes to his senses, he wants to retire. According to Vedic civilization, such retirement is positively recommended, and this portion of life is called Vanaprastha. Retirement is absolutely necessary for a materialist who wants to become free from the activities of a sinful life. King Puranjana's coming home, taking bath, and having an appropriate dinner indicate that a materialistic person must retire from sinful activities and become purified by accepting a spiritual master and hearing from him about the values of life. If one would do this, he would feel completely refreshed, just as one feels after taking a bath. After receiving initiation from a bona fide spiritual master, one must abandon all kinds of sinful activities, namely illicit sex, intoxication, gambling, and meat eating. The word uchita ahara used in this verse is important. Uchita means appropriate. One must eat appropriately and not take after food as hogs take after stool. For a human being, there are eatables described in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 17, shloka 8, as satvika ahara, or food in the mode of goodness. One should not indulge in eating food in the modes of passion and ignorance. This is called uchita ahara, or appropriate eating. One who is always eating meat or drinking liquor, which is eating and drinking in passion and ignorance, must give these things up so that his real consciousness may be awakened. In this way, one may become peaceful and refreshed. If one is restless or fatigued, one cannot understand the science of God. As stated in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 2, Text 20, Evam prasanna manaso bhagavad bhakti yogataha bhagavat tattva vijnanam mukta sangasya jayate. Unless one can become free from the influence of passion and ignorance, he cannot be pacified. And without being pacified, one cannot understand the science of God. King Puranjana's returning home is indicative of man's returning to his original consciousness, known as Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness is absolutely necessary for one who has committed a lot of sinful activities, especially killing animals or hunting in the forest. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshuri Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapita Vyena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayyam Tadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sarvana Raghunatham Vitantam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sagana Darita Shri Vishakhanvitamsha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Mate Bhakti Vedanta Swamini Tinamine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyamadi Paschatadeshatarine Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namine Gauradishema He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Shri Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Shri Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vanchakar Patarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Pitevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Karudimachara Pankudakayati, Yatripatam Shri Guru Dinatara Paramananda Maharushi. Hare Krishna. So, first of all, I'd like to express my deep gratitude towards His Grace Sankarshan Prabhu and the team as well for giving me this service and this opportunity to glorify the Lord, His devotees, and also Srimad Bhagavatam, so that I can purify myself. Because it is said in Shloka chapter 1, Canto 1, chapter 7 and 7 Shloka, it says, Yasyam Vaishuryamanayam Krishne Paramapurushe Bhakti Utpadyate Pumsaha Shoka Moha Bhaya Apaha. Just by oral reception of this Vedic literature, the feeling of for loving devotion service to the Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, awakens, sprouts up at once. And when it sprouts, what happens is that it extinguishes the fire of Shoka Moha Apaha, Bhaya Apaha. Lamentation, illusion, and fearfulness. So, I request. Whatever I have heard from devotees, I will try to present from this shloka, and definitely any shortfalls, anything that is wrong, it will be because of my shortcomings or less intelligence. So please forgive me and accept it. So today's shloka is Canto 4, chapter 26, and text number 11. I'll quickly again read the translation so that we have the context. It says, after this, the king, that is Puranjana, very much fatigued, hungry, and thirsty, returned to his royal palace. After returning, he took a bath and had an appropriate dinner. Then he took rest and thus became freed from all restlessness. Now, a quick recap. In all this, I mean, devotees definitely would have recapped and mentioned about the previous shlokas. So, a quick recap of what we have seen so far. Narad Muni, out of compassion, is trying to bring out Prachini Bharishad from the fruitive activity that he was performing, and for that, and here we see this particular whole chapter or the section is basically a nice way of another unique way of preaching that Narad Muni does in his own. There are multiple styles that Narad Muni has performed in the entire Srimad Bhagavatam when he speaks to different devotees, whether it is Dhruva Maharaj or Prahlad Maharaj, and now it is Prachini Bharishad. So what he does, he gives an allegory. Allegory is basically a story which is actually of that person to benefit that person. So what here, so Narad Muni, what he does is he is giving an allegorical presentation of two Prachini Bharishad in the form of a story, and who doesn't like to hear stories? So a story about King Puranjana. King Puranjana actually, as I said, represents Prachini Bharishad himself. So this particular chapter, chapter 26, it describes how the jiva sometimes gives up proper intelligence under the influence of tamas, or the mode of ignorance and passion, and becomes attached to forbidden objects, and how he regains that discrimination later, how he regains that intelligence through devotees and reaches a stage of discrimination where he can discriminate what is right and wrong. So till now, we have seen that section where King Puranjana is got into that first part of this whole story, where he's into tamas, he's attracted, he's attached to fruitive activities, and also he's mercilessly done a lot of animal killing. Okay. Now this section which we are going to start now is basically where he regains that particular discrimination, or regains his consciousness, as Prabhupada says in this purport, that reawakens his consciousness, which is nothing but Krishna consciousness. Okay, and in this shloka, this particular shloka, each line, I just read out that particular the line by line of the shloka, and the spiritual significance of a particular line. So it says, Tatha Kshutrut Parishranto. The translation is being hungry and thirsty, but the spiritual significance, how we have to understand this particular line, Tatha Kshutrut Parishranto, is living entity was troubled on remembering the sinful activities. And what happens? He regains his consciousness and becomes hungry and thirsty. Hungry and thirsty for what? For regaining or reawakening his consciousness. Okay. Tata Chuttu Parishanto. The next line of the shloka is Nivritto Graham Evan. It says he returns home. Now he is troubled, the living entity is troubled on remembering his sinful activities. What he does, he returns home. After returning home, what he does, he gives up all his sinful activities and again establishes him in dharma or reawakens his consciousness, which is nothing but Krishna consciousness. The third thing which he does is Krita Snanaha, to bath. Krita Snana, to bath, which means he purifies himself. Now, how does he purify himself? The living entity, usually the best way of purification is invite Brahmanas, Vaishnavas, feed them and request them, repent in front of them and request them and perform atonements. Atonements of what? For all the sinful activities that is committed. So first one, he has committed sinful activities. He remembers how all the sinful activities that he has performed, and then he gives up all those activities and establishes himself in Dhamma. Third thing he does is repents, laments, and invites Brahmanas, calls Brahmanas. And in that way he purifies and performs atonements. And that is the way of purifying. Krita Snana. The next thing which he does is he has Uchita Ahara, eats suitable food, which means he gives up all those unwanted food. He gives up eating meat and liquor. He gives up all those things. So again, that is another way of purifying ourselves. And also which means elevating oneself by eating Uchita Ahara. We will see what is the Uchita Ahara in some time. Uchita Ahara is that which is placed in mode of goodness or sattvic food basically, and give up all the tamasic and rajasic food. Okay, with that is another way of elevating our consciousness. And the last thing which is Samvivesha Gata Klamaha. He gets refreshed and he takes rest. What does that mean? He becomes somewhat steady. Lot of sinful activities, understands, gets that realization, wrong, I've done a lot of wrong things. Then he atones for that, he repents for that, laments for that, purifies himself, and also in many ways by requesting Brahmanas to come over, by eating Uchita Ahara, by being steady, and obviously by practicing Krishna consciousness. Yeah? So now in this particular shloka, Puranjana, the initial shloka which says Puranjana is now tired after hunting, and Srila Prabhupada also mentions in the purport, this is a materialistic person works throughout the whole week very, very hard. He's always thinking, where is money, which is sweeter than honey. Okay, so that is what the consciousness of a material person is. I'm sure you will have heard of the Pavarga. These are some of these from the aksharas, the Varnamala that we have. In that there is a specific Pavarga, and it's kind of a very good acronym. Pavarga has 5 alphabets. That is Pa, Fa, Ba, and Bha, and Ma. Now, what does this represent? If we try to understand this particular whole situation of a materialistic person, Pa is basically Parishram. So he does a lot of Parishram. Parishram to the extent that Fa happens. Fa is nothing but fena or foaming through the mouth. You've seen the horses when they're running, you see the foam coming out. Similarly, after a lot of Parishram, what happens? He does Parishram to the extent that he foams. He gets so much exhausted, fena, that is Fa. The third one is, with all this Parishram and to the extent that he gets exhausted or foams from his mouth, he gets attached to this fruitive activities. He gets attached to the fruits of that particular Parishram of the work. That is Bandhan. So Pa is Parishram, Fa is Fena, third is Bandhan. The fourth one is, after all this Bandhan, now what happens is, he's scared to leave all those things. He says, if I leave this, what will happen of me? Everyone will reject me if I don't have money. Even my relatives, my sons, daughters will reject me. So what happens is, that is Bhaya. With all this Parishram, Fena, Bandhan, Bhaya, ultimately he leaves his body. That is Mrityu, ends up dying. So what happens? With all this materialistic activities where it is parishram, to the extent that you foam, to the extent that you get attached to this fruits of that work, the bhaya is basically uncertainty. That if I lose all this, is what will happen. Okay, and ultimately, with all this mood, in this mood, the person leaves his body. In fact, Srila Prabhupada, in one of the lectures, he also said that unless, and this is especially for devotees, he was telling the devotees that unless you are fed up with this material world, which means you're not done with this material world, you cannot start your spiritual life. Yeah, there is association, there is katha, there is kirtan, there is what we hear, we get initiated, what we do, seva, and all those things. That is all official. That is always there. That is definitely, these are steps that we have. That are steps of progress. But unless you're fed up with this material world, unless you're done with this material world, your spiritual life does not start. In the same way, what Puranjana is feeling, he is tired. He feels that I don't want anything more. He's also contemplated that how much sinful activities I've done. And especially this is when Jiva, for him, not the intelligence, but the discrimination awakens. And that is exactly what has happened with Puranjana, which is also indicative what as sadhakas or jivas, we also have to understand. We have to come to that level of discrimination, what is wrong, what is wrong. Now, there is a very interesting aspect that Srila Prabhupada mentions in this purport, is that according to Vedic civilization, now Prabhupada is talking about once you get tired, he said, no, it is done, material life is done for me. Prabhupada writes, according to Vedic civilization, such retirement is positively recommended. And this portion of life is called Vanaprastha. Prabhupada brings in the concept of Vanaprastha. Prabhupada has been very vocal in Srimad Bhagavatam, in all his purports about talking about Vanaprastha. And he says, retirement is absolutely necessary for a materialistic who wants to become free from the activities of a sinful life. And for that matter, Srila Prabhupada also quotes in couple of verses that I just wanted to mention one or two verses. He specifically talks about Vanaprastha ashram. Okay, this is in Srimad Bhagavatam, the summary of Canto 7, Chapter 12. Prabhupada says, after the Grihastha ashram is another ashram known as Vanaprastha. And he says, which is midway between Grihastha and Sannyasa. He mentions that. These are some of the starting shlokas. Another shloka where he mentions, it's from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 5, text 44. He says, no king or respectable gentleman would continue family life till the end, because that was considered suicidal and against the interest of the perfection of human life. Such a beautiful statement Prabhupada is making. Is making that it's talking about no king or a respectable gentleman. What would a respectable gentleman would not do? He would not want to continue family life till the end, because that was considered suicidal. What does Prabhupada mean by suicidal? That means you are similarly what we saw the perverted, right? You get all through all those four phases and ultimately mrityu. That mrityu is not normal. That is suicidal. Is what Prabhupada is mentioning here. And he also says it is against the interest of the perfection of human life. What is the perfection of human life? Go back to Lord. Go back to our seva in the spiritual world. Go back to our seva to Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is the Prabhupada says against the interest of the perfection of human life. Such a two statements, but it was so solid. And also, if we all want to refer about Vanaprastha, there is very much it's so much in detail Prabhupada has mentioned. Disciples of Prabhupada mentioned it's in 11th canto, chapter 18. It's all about Varnashrama. Talks about the entire process of how Vanaprastha needs to be practiced. There are many details. So a few principles I wanted to talk about today that would help us practice or move towards Vanaprastha life. The first one, in Vanaprastha, when you start getting into Vanaprastha life, practice strict celibacy. That has to be a particular point where you practice strict celibacy. Second one, reducing worldly duties and engagements. You have to gradually reduce your worldly duties and engagements. This actually comes naturally because most of it, when we come to a certain age, we would have completed majority of our duties. So it also can come naturally. Okay, that you can reduce your worldly duties and engagements. Third, increasing. Now, once you reduce, what should you do? Increasing absorption in spiritual practices, which means increasing Shravanam and Kirtanam. Okay, that is what you have to increase. So just reducing the worldly duties is not enough. You have to increase something. You have to engage in a higher taste. Okay, so increasing absorption in spiritual practices. Fourth one is increasing austerities. What does that mean? Minimizing our needs, minimizing our comforts, and obviously the material attachments also. Srila Prabhupada, in fact, called Grihastha as the so-called license for sense gratification. Okay, and we have to come out of it. We have to shape up again and accept more austerity and throw overboard all kinds of attachments. The fifth one, switch from external achievements towards internal achievements. This also kind of comes naturally because from an external activities or external achievements perspective, our body itself will be little may not support those particular external activities, which means you don't sit there. I've seen we have a lot of examples within our families and relatives also, that many of them reduce the external achievements or external activities, but they don't increase their internal activities. They don't, because ultimately it is a journey within. Ultimately, the essence is it's a journey within. We have to increase our internal achievements. Many people, my wife also, Radhavani also does. Some of our colleagues who have retired from the bank, they retire from the bank because they'll be crying, foul about all those activities when they're in the bank. But after they retire, they again take up some other job, maybe in the same bank or some other company as finance. Now, what does that mean? You come out of one well and you jump another muck over there. So that is what we have to, from a Vanaprastha perspective, we have to reduce the external achievements, activities, and rather focus on internal achievement. Okay, we have to make that shift. We have to focus from an external activity towards internal activity. From an external activities perspective or external attachment perspective, as a person grows, ages, right, they have to gradually delegate their responsibilities to the next generation. Not only in family, and this is for devotees also, not only family, but also when we do services. Okay, as a devotee grows senior, you would always see that the senior takes more higher responsibilities and would let other services be taken up by little younger devotees. So they kind of delegate responsibilities. So that is also focus of a devotee who's progressing in seniority, where he has to slowly steadily delegate offer. Because one of the aspects of this is when we look up to seniors. We look up to seniors for their guidance, for their wisdom, for their life experiences. Okay, and most important, their self-realization, because they definitely have gone through many aspects of their life, not only materially, but most importantly, we're talking about the spiritual aspects. There are many things that we could learn from the seniors. So seniors also have to delegate, because juniors, we need the guidance and experience and self-realization. The next aspect, the sixth aspect, is simplify our surroundings. Now, Vanaprastha, ideally, which we have heard from, how Dhritarashtra goes, Vanaprastha, quote unquote, is basically going to forest and living a life of mendicant. But you and I, at least, we can't do that. Okay? But imagine we were to go to forest life. What we would do? Do we get we don't get all the luxury, we don't get all the technology, we don't get the WhatsApp and all those things. We will not be around those things. So similarly, we can't go to the forest life, right? But what we can do at the most is try to practice a simple life. So simplify our surroundings. I understand that we need some of the bare minimum needs would be there, whether it is in terms of Lakshmi or whether in terms of technology, but that shouldn't be the first priority. That shouldn't be that priority. I have seen many seniors and ages also hooked up to the new technology or WhatsApp or this piece of bondage that we have. So we have to reduce the bandhan part of it slowly and steadily. So simplify our surroundings. Also, try to simplify our external appearances. What does that mean is, it's self-explanatory, and also it comes to a certain extent, it comes naturally also. what we wear and all those other things, right? So that also can be simplified to an extent. Very simple things. Lastly, but not the least, is simplify our eating. Give up the demand of the tongue. Naturally also our body will demand less because the digestion process is reduced and all those things will happen. Yeah? So naturally also it will be reduced. So simplify eating. Okay? Give up the demand of the tongue. So these are a few principles that we can practice, especially when we move towards Vanaprastha ashram. Now, in a material perspective, which I also spoke about a little earlier, was retired life, or this last phase of the life, okay, is actually viewed, and there are a couple of examples also, where it is seen as another chance to enjoy life. Do all those things which we could not do because we were so engaged in parishram, in fena, okay, that we couldn't do those things. So now is the time. I am free. Now is the time I can engage myself and enjoy life, so-called enjoy. Right? Go on a cruise, or go many places and visit, which all basically those all things which could not do. And one of the example also is engaged by taking one for a job or something. Many people do that. But in spiritual practices, it is the opposite. As what we just heard, what we spoke about now, right? Those principles of Vanaprastha ashram, we are supposed to give up the comforts. We have to reduce the enjoyment and increase our spiritual practices. So spiritual practices, this is the thing. So you reduce one, but at the same time increase the other one. Okay, and what is the endeavor? What is the main purpose of all this? So that we can pass our final examination, so that we all can pass our final challenge, which is nothing but kala in the form of death. Okay. So as we say, our organization is about how to live, not how to, and obviously how to live, and also main is how to live. Okay. So devotees, and this is for me as well. When I say this, I've just heard and I'm just repeating that, but I also have to practice. So devotees need to plan these things well ahead and prepare oneself for a smooth transition from the Grihastha ashram towards the Vanaprastha ashram, which Prabhupada has so much advocated. In fact, in Madhya Leela, chapter 16, text number 130, this particular incident about when Gadadhar Pandit wanted to go along with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and Gadadhar Pandit that time had taken Kshetra Sannyas. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu does not allow Gadadhar Pandit, because that is actually, he says, you have taken a vow, to follow Kshetra Sannyas, and why are you kind of foregoing this vow of Kshetra Sannyas? So he forbade him from taking the Kshetra Sannyas. Now, interestingly, in the purport, if you read the purport of Madhya Leela 16 chapter, text number 130, Srila Prabhupada quotes or mentions what Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur considers or writes or talks about Kshetra Sannyas. Bhaktivinoda Thakur also says that Kshetra Sannyas to be the preferable Vanaprastha. So that's another aspect, another point of view. But yes, for us, from a sadhaka perspective, staying in the dham, we have to be, if we have that opportunity, if we get that opportunity to stay in the dham, definitely we should grab that opportunity. But that comes with lot of maturity. It has to be done in a proper mood when we stay in the dham, because anything done in the dham multiplies 1,000 times. Yeah, we all are aware of that. Spiritual practices, definitely it multiplies, but what if the reverse of that, if any, from an offense perspective or aparadh perspective, that happens from our side, knowingly or unknowingly, just imagine how much, if that multiplies, what would be our status? Yeah. So going to the dham definitely has to be done in the topmost maturity, topmost conscious, in the right consciousness. We can definitely do that. And there are devotees who are doing that. I know a couple of devotees who are staying there in the dham, and they are practicing very nicely. There is a family that we know that are practicing so nicely being in the dham. Yeah. So but the whole thing, whether it is We are in brahmacharya ashram, whether that we are in grihastha ashram, whether we are in, we are moving towards vanaprastha ashram, or for that matter, whether one is in a sannyasa ashram. The whole endeavor, all these principles or all these activities is revolving around one simple fact, two things. Yes, always remember Krishna and never forget Krishna in whatever time. So when we say in the Krishnashtami, what is the ultimate goal? Is Krishna prema. Right? So for us, for this congregation, for the ICC congregation, for ISB congregation, right, we all have a wonderful opportunity. I mean, this is what I was thinking right from the day when we celebrated Srila Prabhupada's appearance day in the new temple. Then when we celebrated Radhashtami, the new temple, I was thinking about that, and it's such a wonderful temple that is coming up, and so that all of us, all the entire congregation, and all those who are currently connected with the ISB and all those that are going to be connected in future, going to be connected to ISB temple, this new temple, I feel that we are very well placed for a very engaging Vanaprastha ashram, because now so many services are coming up. Wonderfully, the temple is coming up. We will have umpteen services to be engaged. Any minuscule services that come up, we have to take up, and so that all those principles that we spoke about, whether it is reducing our external, increasing our internal, simplifying our surroundings, simplifying our eating, simplifying our appearances, all these things, all these principles can be very nicely practiced, being right in the city life. Because what we are doing, if we can't go to the forest to follow a simple life, we can bring that simple life in our life, right? Okay. And again, it is gradually, and as I said, if I say that, I also have to practice that, but each of us can help each other, right? So with this temple coming up, there are so many services that are coming up that we can nicely be engaged. I see whenever I go to Chowpatty, I see that there is a seva in the temple, and which I see seniors do it. Seniors. I mean, seniors means, what I mean is senior citizens. Okay. This seva is basically sitting at near the entrance and exit is also same. They sit near the door, and what they give is charanamrit and one small prasadam. Such a wonderful seva for all those parents who are retired, and they do a rotation base. It is just a small seva, small effort, but it's such a wonderful seva that they do. I know we have also started in the temple now. The pujaris are doing it as grihasthas, and who can be engaged. I've seen also in the temple there is wonderful grihastha who's connected now with the temple, doing wonderful sevas. On top of this, whenever these 2-3 classes which I heard from this place, Narendra Chaitanya Prabhu, this message that he gives consistently, which I've heard and which I want to practice, and devotees also should endeavor to practice, that is, we have to give it back now. He has mentioned that in 1 or 2 classes that I've heard, that we have to give it back now. We have so much facilities, we have so much, the entire package so nicely Prabhupada has given us, and his disciples and the seniors that we are interacting with. It is our time to give it back. Yeah. And we just have to be there when we are required. That's all. Narendra Prabhu the other day made me make an announcement that, because we saw that so many devotees were sitting, that the hall was literally packed. Devotees were also saying that this hall is also becoming short now. So Narendra Prabhu made me know that, okay, this hall is getting short, but we have one more hall that is coming, that is already getting ready. So space is not a constraint. Space is not a constraint. It is our endeavor to be at the right moment, at the right time, at the right place. That is the constraint. That is the endeavor that each one of us, not only us, and I talk about myself also, and whoever we are inviting, whoever we are trying to engage into Krishna consciousness, for all of them. Yeah. This is the endeavor that we should. Small seva, a squirrel seva also. I think Darhas Krishna in his offering to Srila Prabhupada said, I want to make some small squirrel efforts. So that is what we can get started with. Okay. And one more point. So this is what Prabhupada speaks about Vanaprastha and retirement. Some few principles and few points. Prabhupada also speaks about the Uchita Ahara, and he quotes Shloka, I think 17.8, Bhagavad Gita 17.8, which is Ayu Sattva Bararogya, Sukha Priti Vivardhana, Tasyaha Snigdha Sthira Vidya, Ahara Satvika Priya. Okay. Now there is another related verse to that, which is Ahara Shuddho. The earlier words talks about what should be our how it helps, how sattvic food helps in our consciousness. And a related verse to that is Ahara Shuddha, Sattva Shuddha. What happens if we take Shuddha Ahara? Ahara Shuddha, Sattva Shuddha, Sattva Shuddha, Dhruva Smriti, Smriti Lambhe, Sarva Grantinam Vipramoksha. By performance of your one's eatables become sanctified. And by eating sanctified foodstuffs, one's very existence becomes sanctified, because prasadam is sanctioned and sanctified by the Lord. Whenever we offer to the Lord that prasadam, when we offer the bhoga to the Lord, that becomes prasadam, which is sanctioned and sanctified by the Lord. Okay. And once when we have such sanctioned and sanctified food by the Lord, our memory is sanctified, and when the memory is sanctified, one can think to the path of liberation. So, and all of us, I'm pretty sure almost all of us will have this experience when we give somebody prasadam, which is sanctified and sanctioned food by the Lord. When we give some prasadam, how the changes happen. There is one devotee, recently, I think yesterday or day before yesterday, we were discussing about one devotee, as I was saying, who's now, I think, totally connected to the, he's doing seva in the temple, full-time seva in the temple. For him, we recollect, my Radha Bhavani was telling how his wife used to keep on feeding him prasadam. In fact, I am also one of the example where my wife, in all those early days, used to ensure that I eat prasadam somehow or the other. Yeah. So prasadam has, we all know, has a lot of power to translate and transform the consciousness of any person who partakes that. So, yeah. So that is the importance of what Prabhupada is bringing here, and it is in this shloka also. Puranjana, once he purified himself, he took up Uchita Ahara to do what? To sustain that consciousness, to elevate that consciousness and sustain it. That is very important. We can elevate the consciousness, but the most important part is sustaining. We can bring somebody to do a seva one day or 2 days, but the most important point is to sustain that the person keeps on coming. Yeah? So that is very important. To sustain that, we have to practice many things. Especially in Vanaprastha also, we're going towards that. But Uchita Ahara is one of the most important things, so that we can sustain our consciousness. Elevate, definitely it happens, but there is a point where we can sustain. Now, Prabhupada in the last stanzas, he also mentions about one who is always eating meat or drinking liquor, which is eating and drinking in passion and ignorance, must give these things up, so that his real consciousness may be awakened. Okay. So Prabhupada is also mentioning that by eating all this tamasic and rajasic food, what happens is he stays by all the food, he stays in that particular mood. Okay. So Prabhupada writes, a restless person cannot understand the science of God, and we all know that when a person is in that tamasic or rajasic guna or mode, he's always restless. This is especially mentioned in that in the 17th chapter, very clearly mentioned in Bhagavad Gita 17th chapter. What happens? What are the symptoms of a person who is in tamasic or rajasic mode? Very clearly it is mentioned. So Prabhupada also writes here that a restless person cannot understand the science of God. Our consciousness will not let us be connected, or rather the surroundings or the consciousness is not conducive to understand the science of God. And science of God, that word is important. Now, I just read the line that Prabhupada, one who's always eating meat and drinking liquor, which is eating and drinking, passion must give these things up, so that his real consciousness may be awakened. And Prabhupada also mentions a little later about the same point where The real consciousness is basically Krishna consciousness. So that gets awakened. It's dormant over there. That gets awakened. So Puranjanas, King Puranjanas, and Prabhupada also mentioned the last paragraph, King Puranjana's returning home is indicative of man's returning to his original consciousness. See how nicely Srimad Bhagavatam, or there are many pastimes that we read through, whether it is Prithu Maharaj or Prahlad Maharaj or Dhruva Maharaj, all those pastimes, but Bhagavatam also gives us allegoric presentation, especially by Narad Muni, who's a wonderful preacher, to understand what is the original consciousness. So Prabhupada writes, and Prabhupada so very intelligently he writes, King Puranjana's returning home is indicative of man's returning to his original consciousness, which means the jiva's returning to his original consciousness, which means that consciousness is already there. And Prabhupada said, known as Krishna consciousness. How beautifully Prabhupada writes. It is known as, is whoever, so we all have heard somebody making a comment to Srila Prabhupada that everywhere bhakti is mentioned. So Prabhupada says, yeah, if somebody opens up the Bhagavatam and reads only one shloka, and if that bhakti is there, who knows? That person can get elevated and transformed happen. So in this verse, if somebody reads only this verse, if you take only this verse, everything is there in this. The entire, how a devotee's life should be, everything Prabhupada is packaged in this verse. Yeah. And the last, as I said, it says, King Puranjana's returning home is indicative of man's returning to his original consciousness, known as Krishna consciousness. And then Prabhupada writes very beautifully, Krishna consciousness is absolutely necessary for one who has committed a lot of sinful activities, especially killing animals or hunting in the forest. Now he gives a specific definition, a very related definition to this particular shloka, wherein Puranjana, after going through that multiple killing phase and all, now he's returning back. So Prabhupada now adds up this flavor, this tadka, to this particular this section of this chapter. Now, maybe I just quickly summarize. I wanted to quickly go through the table that I was, the shloka that I was referring. This particular shloka, what is the spiritual significance of this particular shloka? It will actually summarize the entire, as I said, entire focus of a devotee's life. Yeah? The first line, it says, Tatha Chutrut Parishranto, which means being hungry and thirsty from a translation perspective, but from a spiritual significance, it says living entity after going through contemplating all the sinful activities that are performed is troubled on remembering that particular sinful activities. Now he is hungry and thirsty to relieve himself from that. That's the first one. Second one is, the second line says, Nivritto Graham Evan. He is returning home. So after contemplating, after understanding what wrong he has done, the next step the living entity has to take is give up all those and return home. Return home is again come back to the original consciousness, which is nothing but, as Prabhupada said, known as Krishna consciousness, and establish himself in his rightful dharma. Second line. Third line, it says, Kritat Snana, took bath. Took bath, we understand a little meaning of it, but the spiritual significance here is the entity who understands what his problem is. He gives up that. He ensures that he will not repeat that problem. But the third, now he has to atone for all those wrong things and stuff that he has done. So how is the atonement? Call the Brahmanas. We also heard about Shravanam and Kirtanam. We associate with devotees, perform atonement for them. And basically, most important is repentance. Most important is repentance. Okay. Next is to sustain. Fine, you have done all those things, you have taken steps also. Now next is sustain, because that is very important. It can't be like today you do that and tomorrow, it can't be like Sankalpa and Vikalpa. Uchita Ahara. So you continue Krita Snana, you continue Uchita Ahara. Krita Snana, which is so associated devotees. Uchita Ahara is what? You purify internally also. Take all, remove, reduce all the external stuff. Neglect all those tamasic and rajasic food, especially because it's talking about ahara, and take something ahara. And the last one, what happens because of all these steps that one takes? Samvivesha Glata Gata Klamaha. Like this, after doing all those things, the living entity, Kiran King Puranjana, felt refreshed and he took rest. He took rest and he felt refreshed. What happens from in a devotee's perspective, a jiva's perspective, he does all these things, he becomes somewhat stable. So that actually brings up a nice balance in one's life for moving towards, as we spoke about retirement, that is getting into Vanaprastha ashram, and what all principles we also saw, what we can follow. We also saw that we all are well placed. We don't have to go to the forest. We don't find a forest nowadays here. So we don't have to go to a forest. And being where we are situated, we can ensure if we follow all these principles which are coming out of this wonderful shloka, we can follow that and practice Vanaprastha very nicely. And then lastly, we also spoke about how tamasic and rajasic Prabhupada says Vihama has to come out of it, how it makes person restless, and we have to ensure that we come out of it. And for that, Kuchita Ahara, Krita Snana we have to perform. And lastly, Prabhupada explains that, gives the definition of Krishna consciousness, because returning to his original consciousness, which is known as Krishna consciousness. So this is what I had today. So thank you so much. So much.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranams.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
You want to share something, Prabhuji? Or?
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhuji. It was really very wonderful class, like giving the material meaning to the verse and also the spiritual meaning. And you also mentioned about the Pavarga when you mentioned like it is the daily I am going through. I could understand
All
that way. Yes, Prabhuji. And very nicely like you summarized, and it was very wonderful class, Prabhuji. Radharan Mata, you wanted to say something?
Yes. Prabhu, actually, when I was in the Puranjana Vrutanta, when the previous chapter was nice, but when this 26th chapter started, I was not understanding the correlation. Like I wanted to ask this question, but every day something was happening. But very nicely you have told, Prabhu, that returning of Puranjana is like returning to the original consciousness. That is very nice. Prabhu, you give so much of information, but you're very, very fast, Prabhu. Please don't. Little slow, Prabhu. And about the Vanaprastha, you told very nicely. I think I should have been following from some time. Yeah, let me just put into this thing, Prabhu. And I want to ask about the Kshetra Sannyasa, Prabhu. That means, suppose if you're following, we could not leave Bangalore also, or something like that. Or
fantastic, Madhuri. What a wonderful place you mentioned. Bangalore itself is a dham for us. So Prabhupada said, wherever there is an ISKCON temple, it is nothing less than a dham. So whether you're in Bangalore or Chikkalasandra or Kumaraswamy, it doesn't matter. Now, Kshetra Sannyas, from that perspective, ideally it is related to the dham. But if we are nicely engaged, we have to follow Vanaprastha. Why not? In that way, we can understand that. But it is related to the dham.
It's related to dham.
One point about this, Prabhu also shared some examples of some devotees that he has seen. I just on Kshetra Sannyas, what I understood was it's more a state of consciousness. Although yes, dham ideally now again, what is a dham? Then we have to get into that. Not just the major dhams that we are aware of, but like Prabhu said, temple, proximity to temple, or even at home. But the consciousness I've seen of devotees in that state, senior devotees, is they are satisfied. They don't have any more desires of seeing that place, this place, travel. Like I remember when I joined, I was staying in temple. This was in US. There was very elder couple who just dedicated to the temple. They did from morning to evening. They were serving. I was just new and young, and there was Rath Yatra here. There was some program there. I would be like very excited to go every here and there. I would say, "You're not coming. You're not coming." So, I mean, so they were satisfied. It was the biggest festival of the area. It was happening half an hour away, but they didn't feel the need to go there. I mean, they were satisfied with their services. So this is the state of consciousness. Of course, everything has a right time and place. So things, that means they have done all that, and they've seen what it is not, and they've got the benefits. Now they are at a higher state. I mean, that's my that was what I understood, that they were like really only unless real some emergencies or some things they would travel, but they wouldn't travel. They're still serving there, the 75 plus, and serving very strongly, in fact more strongly than many younger devotees. So this is what I had observed, that consciousness of Kshetra Sannyas. Many more things are there, but I just wanted to share that. I was remembering them when you were telling this.
I think it's a valid point. It's a state of consciousness. Wherever you are, definitely it's a state of consciousness. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Sri Balaji Prabhu. Wonderful, wonderful class, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Prabhu.
So you've given complete synopsis of what Krishna consciousness is, and especially grahasthas who are getting older like me. What should be our next state? How should we prepare for our next state? So wonderful class, Prabhuji. I have one doubt. You mentioned about that 5 pavarga: Parishram, Fena, Bandhan, Bhaya. Right, Prabhuji. Can you briefly explain about the first 2, Parishram and Fena?
Parishram is, as the word suggests, it is about working. You do a lot of mehnat, or lot of endeavor. So the first thing is, this Pavarga is basically an acronym to depict how the material life is. In that context, we have to understand. Parishram is endeavor to the fullest, and because of that endeavor, you do the endeavor to the extent that foam comes. That is the Fena. Fena is foam to the like the ass of the donkey, right? So Parishram, to the extent that we foam from a mouth, that's how much we do Parishram. And because of that, we get attached, and it is all done in the consciousness of being attached to the fruits of the work. I hope that explains Parishram, Fena, and Bandhan.
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you, Prabhu. Hard work and getting attached to the results, right, Prabhu?
Yes. Hard work to the extent that you form, and Ba is Bandhan, that we get attached, be attached to them. And because of that, Bhaya happens, because we are attached so much that we feel very uncertain, and everything is uncertain, that if I lose that, what will happen? That Bhaya is
okay, Prabhu. Okay, Prabhu. Thank you, Prabhu.
Once,
words about Haridas Thakura, Prabhu.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Please complete your thought. You remembered something.
Yes. So it was once Bhakti Rasai Maharaj was here, and then this question that I'd asked him, that Maharaj, how would we? Maharaj talking about fears in life. So then I asked Maharaj, what about the fear of uncertainty? Maharaj said, there is only prayers will help. That's what Maharaj said. So everywhere there is uncertainty, we can't really deal with it, but only sincere prayers to the Lord. That, and obviously, he also said about the association and being in the shelter of devotees. So that's what he said. But that uncertainty of fear is always. So
Prabhu, association of devotees is very, very important, Prabhu.
Very much.
It goes on, reinforces us, even if we try to slide down. It's
like that, Mataji. If you use in technical terms, when we say you're using a laptop and a computer, but you have this antivirus, right? Whenever there is a virus, you get an alert notification. Yeah, there are antivirus is there. I'm cleaning it. So our conditioning and all those anarthas, right? Those are like the viruses. So we need that antivirus of devotees with us. We have to continuously kind of upgrade it also, so that we are well covered. Because any new virus or any new anartha or any new variety of the anartha coming up, if we are not upgraded ourselves, we are not sheltered properly with the antivirus of the associated devotee, it will be very difficult. I mean, I'm saying this, but I also have to practice this. It's very important.
On uncertainty, I heard one thing I just want to share.
Yes,
That if we accept, and this was in the principle of acceptance. I think we have discussed this before. If we accept uncertainty, then life becomes the adventure. And if we don't accept it, then it is fearful. So this is the dynamics of uncertainty. So if you don't accept uncertainty, it results in fear. But if you accept it, then everything that happens, and again, if you connect it to like it's Krishna's plan, then life is an adventure.
Yeah, yes.
So this is I heard from a senior devotee, so I just shouted.
I think we had discussed about this probably once when we were discussing, the both of us.
Yeah.
Very nice. I remember that probably. Yes, probably. Very nice statement. Very powerful.
Thank you, Prabhu. Very nice class. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you for the wonderful class. Thank you, Prabhu.
And today, just wanted to, we all know it is Srila Haridas Thakur Disappearance Day also today. So, like how when Mahaprabhu went to Haridas Thakur and saw how much, and at such a physically was so in a very, very downstage, but still he continued chanting. And when Mahaprabhu, when he asked that why are you chanting so many rounds? You've already done so much. You can reduce your rounds. What is the problem then? So Haridas Thakur says my only problem is my mind. Rest all is okay. So I was thinking that only. For me, if I'm such it is a physical well placed as of now, but still the chanting of that mood is nowhere near that what as a devotee we should be striving for. There are devotees who are now chanting around 190 rounds socially to commemorate this particular day. I think we should really pray to Haridas Thakur, the Namacharya. Mahaprabhu has named his Namacharya. That give us this strength to practice, to chant more attentively and sincerely, and complete our rounds also very attentively and sincerely. And in fact, I was just contemplating on this point where Haridas Thakur, if you go out of the principles that we just discussed about Varnashram, Vanaprastha, attending to Vanaprastha, all those qualities Haridas Thakur has glorified, has exemplified actually. Whether it is the humility that he has exemplified, whether it is the mode of compassion that he has exemplified, especially when he was beaten in 22 marketplaces. I mean, how much endeavor he has done. Obviously, Mahaprabhu was there always with him, but that endeavor part is always from the first person. So that how Haridas Thakur also exemplified that endeavor is our part. Mahaprabhu's mercy is always there, and Mahaprabhu will take care of it. But our part is the endeavor. So let us all beg at the lotus feet of Srila Haridas Thakur that at this day, he can shower his costless mercy, that we can also chant very attentively and sincerely and be part of this. Continue to sustain ourselves very strongly in this mission of Srila Prabhupada, and engage all of us nicely in the seva towards Guru and Guru.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu, Dandavat Pranam. Thanks for the wonderful class.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Prabhu, we have to give a big haribol to our president, temple president,
Yes.
Narhar Chaitanya Prabhu, and the team of Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. With the service which they are doing. It's amazing, Prabhu, amazing. Sitting at home, we are getting to listen to Bhagavatam.
Bhagavatam, yes. Haribol, very nicely said, ma'am. Very true.
Hare Krishna devotees, one quick reminder, tomorrow is very auspicious day, Bhadra Purnima, and also the day our Jagadguru Srila Prabhupada has actually accepted the sannyasa ashram. Tomorrow we will have a very special class from His Grace Narhari Chaitanya Prabhu on this auspicious occasion. So I would request all the devotees take advantage of this opportunity and attend the class.